Right now, you could pick one up in the dark, find every button, hit every trigger, and never once look down. You've done it 1,000 times, but where did this object actually come from? The story doesn't start in a toy store or a California garage. It starts in a weapons lab in the opening years of the Cold War. Fighter pilots had been gripping a control stick since the First World War. By some accounts, the word joystick appears in aviator slang as early as 1910, long before any video game existed. In the early 1950s, the U.S. Air Force built SAGE, the Semi-Automatic Ground Environment, a coast-to-coast radar network designed to track Soviet bombers in real time. SAGE operators used light guns to mark targets on glowing screens. For the first time in history, a human was holding a handheld device to interact with information displayed on a screen in front of them. In 1966, a German-born American engineer named Ralph Baer was waiting at a New York bus terminal when an idea struck him. What if you could play games on your television set? Baer built a prototype he called the Brown Box, a wooden device with 2 wired controllers, each one a box with a single dial. It was clunky. It was the seed of everything. That prototype became the Magnavox Odyssey, the world's first home video game console. The controllers were simple paddles. You turned a knob to drag a glowing square across the screen. Nolan Bushnell's Atari adapted that concept into Pong, first an arcade machine in 1972, then a dedicated home console in 1975. The controller was one aluminum knob. Millions of people played it. Through the late 1970s, arcades became cathedrals of reaction time. The 8-way joystick mounted inside a wooden cabinet, stiff, spring-loaded, loud, was the defining physical sensation of a generation. In 1977, Atari's VCS launched with the CX40 joystick, a black stick, 1 orange button, a blocky square base. It was the first controller that felt like a distinct object you held in your hand. That joystick gave you 8 directions and 1 button. That was the entire language of interactive entertainment for millions of children across the late 1970s. And somehow, it was enough. But games were growing more ambitious. As designers pushed harder, a single button began to feel like a language with only 1 word. Something had to evolve. In 1979, Mattel launched the Intellivision with a controller built around a 16-direction disc and multiple side buttons. It was more capable than Atari's. It was also far more confusing. Meanwhile, at Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto, an engineer named Gunpei Yokoi was working on a very different problem. His game and watch handhelds were tiny, far too small for a joystick. In 1980, Yokoi designed the directional pad, a flat, cross-shaped rocker a thumb could press in 4 directions with total precision. No moving parts, no bulk, just a plus sign. The D-pad wasn't just a clever workaround. It was a new philosophy. A controller doesn't need to mimic a joystick. It needs to fit the thumb that will use it. While Nintendo refined its hardware in Japan, the American games market was collapsing. The crash of 1983 buried consumer trust under an avalanche of rushed, low-quality cartridges. Nintendo launched the Famicom in Japan in 1983, then the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America in 1985. The controller was a gray rectangle, D-pad, 2 buttons, start, select. That bare design was a calculated move. Nintendo made the NES look like a toy, and the controller approachable enough for anyone to pick up. It rebuilt an industry that had imploded 2 years before. Sega fought back with the Genesis in 1989. The Genesis pad started with 3 face buttons, then expanded to 6 by 1993, responding to the explosion of competitive fighting games. Nintendo's answer was the Super NES controller in 1990, 4 color-coded face buttons, a refined D-pad, and something entirely new: 2 shoulder buttons positioned on the back, under the index fingers. Those shoulder buttons were quietly revolutionary. They doubled available inputs without crowding the face of the pad and gave designers room to build more complex games. Nearly every controller since has kept them. As controllers grew more complex, manufacturers began studying how hands actually worked: grip widths, thumb reach angles, finger fatigue. Controller design quietly became a branch of applied ergonomics and industrial psychology. In 1994, Sony launched the PlayStation in Japan. The original controller refined everything Nintendo and Sega had established: symmetrical hand grips, 4 face buttons, 4 shoulder buttons, into something genuinely comfortable to hold. But a new challenge arrived with 3-dimensional games. Digital buttons, fully on or fully off, couldn't express the nuance of navigating 3D space. Players needed a way to say, a little left, not just left. Nintendo's 64 offered the first answer: a central analog thumbstick. The N64 controller looked strange, 3 prongs, but that stick let Mario move at any speed between motionless and full sprint. In 1997, Sony released the DualShock: 2 analog sticks, 4 face buttons, 4 shoulder buttons, and for the first time in a mainstream controller, built-in vibration motors. Those motors were a small addition that turned out to be enormous. When the controller buzzed as a car crashed or a weapon fired, the boundary between player and screen blurred just slightly. The PlayStation 2, released in 2000, went on to become one of the best-selling consoles in history. Its DualShock 2 controller, by some estimates, shipped alongside more than 150 million units. By the early 2000s, the modern controller template was essentially finished: 2 analog sticks, a D-pad, 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, 2 analog triggers. A design stable enough to last decades. In 2001, Microsoft launched the Xbox with a controller gamers immediately nicknamed the Duke. It was enormous. A slimmer version arrived within months, but the dual-stick layout was right from day one. Through the early 2000s, Bluetooth and proprietary wireless protocols quietly replaced the cables connecting controllers to consoles since 1972. For the first time, the living room was truly untethered. In 2006, Nintendo's Wii brought motion controls to the mainstream, pointing, swinging, tilting the remote itself. It seemed like the thumbstick era might be ending. Most players eventually went back. One innovation that did stick: analog triggers. Rather than clicking on or off, the shoulder triggers on modern controllers detect how hard you press, giving designers a new axis of pressure-sensitive control. Sony's DualSense, launched with the PlayStation 5 in 2020, introduced adaptive triggers that physically resist your finger mid-press, and haptic motors precise enough to simulate the sensation of walking on gravel. Engineers now talk about field design as a distinct creative discipline, crafting how a controller sensation is experienced as deliberately as a game's visuals or soundtrack. The pad has become a sensory instrument. By some estimates, more than 1 billion game controllers have been manufactured worldwide, roughly 1 for every 8 people on Earth, making it one of the most widely produced precision instruments in history. The lineage runs straight, from joysticks guiding wartime aircraft, through Cold War radar rooms, through Ralph Baer's wooden prototype, to whatever controller is within arm's reach of you right now. Gunpei Yokoi, the man whose cross-shaped D-pad lives in virtually every controller ever made, died in a road accident in Japan in 1997, the same year the DualShock went on sale. Ralph Baer received the U.S. National Medal of Technology in 2006. He kept inventing until his death in 2014 at the age of 92. The remarkable thing is what your body learned without being taught. Your thumb finds the right stick the way a musician's fingers find a chord, without looking, without thinking. Every reflex in your hands is the accumulated product of 60 years of engineering, invention, and competition, compressed into 100 grams of plastic and circuitry. It has no screen, makes no sound, contains no intelligence. And yet it is the primary interface through which billions of people have experienced other worlds. Somewhere today, a child picks up a controller for the very first time. They don't know Ralph Baer or Gunpei Yokoi, but their thumbs are about to learn a language 60 years in the making. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.